When I was 16, I won a great victory. I felt in that moment I would live to be 100. Now I know I shall not see 30. None of us know our end, really, or what hand will guide us there.
Sick.
All right, we're back at it, dude. Give me these fucking glasses. Pussy.
Actually, yeah, because we make things harder for ourselves because we're doing two things. We're sending from the mixer, aux send, to the Atom, and then the Atom is sending to the computer.
Like double.
It is double. Yeah.
Double fucking jeopardy.
It's extra places for it to go wrong.
Not only that, but it's like, why are we doing extra shit?
Well, it's because we want the switcher. That's literally the only reason.
Yeah, but if we just recorded, sold the switcher,
we've talked about this before, and I even mentioned it, and you were
4K?
like, no. And I'm like, all right.
The only better option with this is like when you're live.
Maybe wait another year, and like when AI gets like even better, and those tools, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's more feasible at that point.
It's gay. Right now, it's gay.
It's not there.
Read 2 books this week.
Hey, respect. If I could reach you, I'd dap you up.
Yeah, I read 2 books. One was The Apology of Socrates.
That was interesting. You mentioned that, yeah.
And the other one was classic, 48 Laws of Power.
Yep. Well, I guess classic. I know what you mean.
It is. I mean, technically.
No, yeah. It's in literature when people talk classics, you have to think of like fucking Charles Dickens and
Dostoevsky.
Well, yeah, Tolstoy. And that's classics.
Yeah.
Like Brian Greene's like he's
exactly.
pretty modern, not exactly a classic, but yes, that is a really great book.
No, but I mean classic as like a kind of like a must read.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely a must read within like the first, like this century. Well, I guess 21st. I think that was 21st century.
Yeah. Let's discuss them a little bit. So we've improved in technology because we have improved in logic over the years. Because if these are the true words of Socrates, the way they brought logic was there was a lot of hearsay when they were discussing. When
You're talking about back in Socrates' time?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
There's a lot of hearsay versus like actual what we would consider right now factual. We would not consider a lot of their arguments factual understandings.
Yeah, you have to understand too when people compare current, like modern times, to ancient Greek, like the early ancient Greek era. You have to understand where they were, like where society was at that time. Personally, people talk about the ancient Romans, and there was that shit on TikTok and Instagram where it's like, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And guys, you'd see this trend going around, like girls asking.
Yeah,
guys,
he's like sometimes.
Yeah, and then some people talk about like all the time. Personally, I never think about the ancient Roman Empire, but I think about the ancient Greeks a lot. Those are my favorite. The reason for that is there were so many things happening in like 400 years of time that we still reference to this day, and it was the catalyst to a lot of things. modern medicine started back then with Hippocrates.
Yeah.
That was the first Western doctor in human history. It's kind of crazy.
To be fair, there's a lot of things in Egypt that were even more astonishing that we don't actually cover as much as we cover like the Western worlds.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
It doesn't
it's
get as
because,
much light.
No, not only that, it's because we've modeled ourselves after that. Had we modeled ourselves with the ancient the Egyptians, then yeah, for sure we'd be referencing them instead and talking about how special they were. But because most of
as
our
far as building though,
most of our
Egyptians can't.
no, I understand, but
yeah.
you got to understand why we in the Western world, because we are in the Western world, right? This not every country feels the same way, but in the Western world, because a lot of our stuff draws from that. That's why we look at these guys in such high regard. At least I do, anyways. The interesting one for me, and what I was gonna tie it back to what you just said, is you talk about facts, which is really interesting. The way we currently write, in the idea of, for example, reporting, right? Like recording history. Like before, there's a writer called Herodotus. You might want to look him up. Herodotus wrote the first.
How do you spell that?
Herodotus. Herodotus. It might be Dotus. He was the first. He wrote the first recorded book of history the way that we currently write it.
Right.
So that's not to say that people didn't think back on history, but before Herodotus, history was recorded with a lot of fables and like legends. So people would, if you did something crazy, your kids would tell your stories in a certain way that embellished what you did. Right? So like, let's say if you fought off like 3 guys.
Bias.
They talk about, not just bias, but that was just the way that the culture was at the time. They were just, to keep things interesting, they would embellish the stories by like, mentioning that, you were imbued with like the spirit of the god or something, or like, so the Trojan War, for example, when people think about the Trojan War, the Iliad is written not as like a factual, this is actually what happened, this is like, it happened like this, because that was considered boring back then.
Right.
So they would throw things in like, the spirit of Artemis imbued a guy or whatever. So it was very, it had a lot of fiction into it, but it wasn't considered fiction back then. That was just how they did history. Herodotus came in and said, you know what, I'm going to write a book of history of like, there was like a crazy war at the time. He said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to follow these soldiers. I'm going to follow these generals. I'm going to do all this. And I'm going to write a story that just explains the facts. I'm only going to write the events that happen. I'm not going to embellish them. I'm just going to say it as it is. It might be boring, but this is what. And
That's interesting because even the Bible is.
You know what the name of? Oh, the Bible is way before that too. Because exactly, the Bible, the way it is written, even the factual accounts of the Bible, they're not considered factual the way that we consider them factual. Because that's not how they wrote it back then.
Yeah.
Right. They would write in parables and write in all these other like different forms of writing. But Herodotus, his book, his most famous book, you know what it's called? It's literally called Histories. The word history comes from that. So it's when you talk about like facts and all that stuff, that was ancient Greece was the nexus for all this talk of logic. Because back then, man, I remember thinking to myself, like, imagine right now, like we people talk in group chats or whatever, right?
Right.
Back then, some of these philosophers, they had like the best lives. Because you know what they would do? They would fucking wake up.
We've talked about this.
Yeah,
Get up.
They would go to the forum and just talk shit for the whole day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole fucking day, they're just there, and
they were
in this
they were
huge ass
known
building.
as, like people that were like I guess on the verge of enlightenment.
Yes, yeah,
For the time period.
yeah.
So it's
And then
interesting.
and you'd have children who would come up and just hang around.
Yeah.
The same way that you would go play sports and you have like the kids hanging around waiting to play.
And those are the kids that they would fuck.
Well, I mean, also that. I mean, there's, but sort of yes, but like that relationship is a bit different than we think of it now with like pedophilia. But
Yo, don't cover for them.
no,
How
I'm
dare
just saying
you.
it's not like they would go find children to go fuck. That's not how it works.
Yeah, there would be just twinks around.
No. It is like they would take an apprentice. And they would fuck. No, seriously, they would take an apprentice and then they would fuck their apprentice.
I don't think that was always the case, though.
That's what it was with like the kids, but because they didn't hide any of this. You got to understand. I'm talking about the stuff that was out there in the open. Now, if you decided to hide shit and do some crazy deviant stuff, okay, that's whatever.
By
But
all means.
this was out in the open where it was considered normal for you to do this.
Like, honey, I'll get home late tonight. I gotta go fuck this.
Something like that. Well, I mean, this kind of ruins it, but I was going to mention, because you know of Plato, right?
Yeah.
Well, Plato came after Socrates.
Yeah.
Plato was
Took
a
his
kid.
ass.
Plato was a child when Socrates was doing his thing. When he was like kind of in his like mid 40s, around like, he was kind of like not the king, but the guy when it comes to philosophy. Plato's hanging around in the forums, just listening into like all these discussions.
So
and then eventually he came along and started doing his thing.
So my thing is like, if that's the case, right? Did Greeks just have like shit on their dick?
Jeez.
Because like there was no douching back then. Like these guys are smart, but there was no like douching your ass or anything like this. So, or like what are those called? Like those coffee bombs where you fucking.
And we're back.
We tried to get away with it, but we just couldn't. Anyway,
these 5 minutes of enlightenment brought to you by Funny but Foul.
but 30 seconds is just
Exactly.
absolute offensive bullshit.
30 seconds of deviancy.
Okay, do you ever read the Book of Enoch?
No, but it sounds. I know it's a really. It's again when we talk about like must reads. It's up there.
It's up there. So
Yeah.
I'm midway. I actually was like, I read a lot this week, so trying to catch up. I'm trying to do like one a week is my goal. But if I get
Maybe go for one a month, bro. 1 week is fucking heavy for books.
some of these books though, they're not as long as you think. Like Socrates thing was like 120 pages.
Fair enough.
It was not a long read. I think that took me only like 6 hours or something like that. It was not that long, less. Anyway, the interesting thing about the Book of Enoch is that by reputation makes it what it is. So,
yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to discuss it in detail, but basically, just to get people interested on it, it's basically a prophet that was left out of all religious texts. Now it's uncovering why. But I'm not deep enough into it to distinguish well and describe why he was left out exactly. It's just starting to, like, I'm only like 30 pages in. But yeah, very, very interesting set of text, because it's like, fuck, we all thought,
You gotta maybe preface for people what the Book of Enoch is. Like, it's not some book that was written like last year or like even the last like 10 years. You gotta explain like what this is.
The issue with reading these books too, like the apology of Socrates and stuff like this, it's like, it's not just reading it. It's like you have to go back and there's words that they use that we don't actually use. So I don't even understand some of it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
so
100%.
It's like there's a lot of, it's not straightforward text where it's like big words. It's just words that have been yarned away in English.
Yes.
Like in common English, they've been yarned away. And also another
They've been
thing,
translated like 100 million times.
the other issue is that the way they talk is not how we talk anymore.
Yes.
So there's things like art thou shalt, like,
Not even that.
That's the basic.
Yeah. There's
But
more than that.
There's aspects to
Yep.
it where you're just like, what the fuck did I just read? Like, what does that even fucking mean? That's why it takes a long time. But I think if you don't smoke weed, which I haven't done this week, and you're clear-headed, you sleep well,
Yeah.
you can understand a lot more. That's the number one thing. I honestly think I could compete with these kids that work at Silicon Valley if I don't smoke weed and just focus on, because I'm an extremist. You know I'm an extremist. If I focus on like no monetary values, just academic values, and that's what I put my mind to. I that's why I think that it's better to just start at some point in your life. Trying to do that route. And I think you can catch up because your learning curve as you first start is a lot higher than some kid that, has spent 15 years trying to be an academic.
Yeah.
Right? Your learning curve when you first start, because your brain is fresh.
Yep.
You become interested. And if you have an addictive personality, it actually helps you out in this way because you keep feeling better as you read books. It's kind of like having a good workout. You read a book, you learn something like the 48 laws of Like every book I read, I try to get a fucking lesson out of it.
Mm-hmm,
At least one.
Yeah.
The thing I learned from the Socrates one was like their logic wouldn't work now.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, don't put them on a pedestal. Don't put Socrates, Plato, these guys on a pedestal. They were smart at their time, but there's a lot of translation that happened, a lot of background things that happened that their actual accounts of their daily life doesn't apply anymore now. So it's like, take what you can out of them, but realistically, you got to understand that those were different people at a different time where logic was different.
I think the other thing too there, and I think you nailed that perfectly, is don't isolate these things. You know what I mean? Like, don't take these things in isolation. You have to do more work and actually understand the context in which these things were made, right? So if you're going to read the works of some ancient writer from back in the day, understand how he came to that.
Yeah.
What environment was he in? What was the world like back then? What was his life like, right?
But I'll tell you, they have a lot more extreme ideologies than we think. Like, Western world back in the day, we're talking no more than 200 years ago, was a lot closer to what's happening in the Middle East right now as far as rules and regulations than what we know of in North America.
Well, that's why I mentioned you need to understand the context, because to that point, the world was a very disconnected place back then.
Yeah.
They literally had no idea that there was a North and South America. They had no idea that there was anything beyond they thought Persia, like, that was it. They're like, beyond Persia, there's like South Africa. What the fuck is South Africa?
They didn't know
what
about
is
Africa.
What is China?
Hold on. I think they knew about Africa.
They knew about Northern Africa. That's
Yeah.
it. They only knew about the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And they only knew
They knew about China.
No, they didn't know about China.
They knew about
They
China.
did not know about China.
When was the first trade with China?
Bro, that was like way later, like the fuck way later, dude.
I'd imagine they'd be
talking
pretty
like
close.
talking like literally 1,000 years later.
You sure?
I'm not even kidding you right now.
Are you 100% sure?
I am 100% sure that there was
Okay.
nothing with China then back then.
All right.
Because the ancient Greek era was Socrates was around in 400 BC. That's 400 years before birth of Christ. 400 years before the Roman Empire.
One thing about just going back to basically the 48 laws of power. A few things that I learned from it. Do you remember any actual things you learned from reading that book?
It's been a while. That was the first Brian Greene book that I picked up. I remember I picked up Mastery as well. There's another one. His new one I want to pick up, something about laws of nature or whatever. Laws of power. No, I can't remember a law of power specifically. If you mention one, I'll be like, yeah, I remember reading about that. I also don't actually think I finished that book in its entirety, The 40 Laws of Power. That's a thick book, man. And I got distracted with something else, but that's a thick book. That's a big one.
The interesting part about that book is that it basically teaches you to be a functional psychopath.
Yes.
A sociopath, whatever you want to call it, however introverted or extroverted you are would differ that. But basically, it just teaches you how to use people, abuse people, and it's actually I would say one of the best books I've ever read because it applies to my kind of thinking and my kind of life a lot more than I think majority of people that would read that book.
And it goes both ways too, because by that same thought that you just said about, becoming a basic functioning psychopath or whatever, and all these things, for somebody who's not like that at all, it's a good book to read so you don't get played. So you see that coming. Not to say you're going to be that person, but it's good to know about it.
If you have good pattern recognition and you are a psychopath, this is like the book to read.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
But like I said, it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
There's a portion that says, conceal your identity and intentions as much as possible.
Yeah.
So, can we imagine somebody who's done this perfectly? Because nobody we know has done all of these.
No.
But there's people we know that have done these things.
Certain things. Oh, for sure.
Better than others. For
sure.
example, I don't conceal my intentions as much as you guys do. You guys conceal your intentions a lot more. But one person that conceals his identity completely is Sonny. Very well.
Yeah.
A lot better than average people.
Yeah.
So you could learn something from that. Like, hey, that's whether you want to say indirectly or directly, that's helped them in a certain context.
Well, the thing is, too, you got to understand why you have to, I think, first establish your values and intents. Like, what are you intending to do?
Make
right?
everybody like you and then use them to do things.
that's fine if you want to do that. Not everybody does. I think for anybody getting into this book, understand that you should have your intentions thought as you're reading this, and even before you start reading this, have your intentions thought out ahead of time, right? Because this isn't, you're not going to pick this book up and be like, I'm going to live my life like that. So that's no, but definitely there's a lot to learn in this book. And it's like, sure, if you want to be a high functioning sociopath, there's a fuck ton of stuff you can take from this. If you're working in an environment where you're getting fucking like, you're getting pressed by all these, as you say, psychopaths, this is a great book for you to know how to deal with certain people, right? So it's useful in a lot of different ways, not just one way, I think is what I'm trying to say.
The other thing is the thing that I do pretty well is seem dumber than you are. That's something that I think among majority of people I meet, they think I'm a lot dumber than I actually am.
That actually reminds me of, it actually reminds me of, like, literally the moment you just said that, like, the first person that pops into mind, he was, he's been watching our podcast a lot. He was the homie who met up with that Southsider one time. The guy I used to work with in Toyo, sales guy.
I've never met him.
No, you haven't met him, but
Okay,
you know of him because I've shared.
I know of him.
Okay, him.
Yeah.
First impression you'll ever get from this guy, if you ever see him in
Dumb
a
as fuck.
professional setting, you think he's like some like stupid like dumb, doesn't notice he's just there for a good time, fucking drinking, doing whatever. The guy is fucking sharp.
Right.
He is fucking sharp. It took me like a year and a half after knowing him and working with him on a daily basis to understand just how fucking sharp he was.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I went traveling with him and we went to these like site visits and stuff, these meetings with customers, and then we do the work after. I was like, holy fuck, this guy is actually really fucking smart. And I remember even thinking, I'm like, this guy actually doesn't need me to do what I'm like. I was like, what I'm doing, my job function at the time, I'm like, he doesn't actually need this. Yeah. Like, yes, it helps him because, it takes less off his plate or whatever. But I'm like, he could actually do all this stuff that I'm doing.
Stuff by himself.
I'm like, holy shit, this guy's actually really fucking sharp.
Yeah. The other thing is, one other good one is do not, men generally feel like, even right now, there's a new up and coming wave. I mean, not new, but in our early 20s, this was also the case, where they tell you like, okay, disappear, improve your life. Come back,
yeah.
This, that is not something that I think is beneficial in all contexts. You have to, isolation is poison. Because you need to, we've talked before about gauging yourself and testing yourself and seeing where you land. So we've talked about hitting on girls and how if you're getting older, you have to come up with the fact that you have to understand the fact that your body composition is no longer the same as you were when you were 20.
Sure.
Therefore, financially, mentally, you have to be sharper. Now, if you can keep all the aspects, physically, mentally, emotionally, everything intact, perfect world, great. But one thing that is key is that by mingling with many, many people, not only do you learn pattern recognition, but you also you sharpen yourself. You sharpen your social dexterity as far as being able to slip in and slip out, kind of being like water with people. How important is it to be able to communicate with all sorts of different people, male, female, in all counts, and be able to slip in, slip out while having a very high admiration percentage. So people admire you, right? Now, you don't have to like these people. You just have to make it seem like you like them. Yeah. Right? Enough that they like you and they do things for you, or they, even small or big, like whether it's a girl that just invites you out or some big time firm exec that shows you some love from time to time. Yeah. Regardless of what the fact is, it's like try to get benefits as much as you can with putting the least amount of effort as a friend.
It made sense. I'm like, why'd you say the friend for it? Because I'm like in the work context.
Because you just.
I know what you mean.
You want to seem friendly, but the thing is like there's levels to it. If you're too friendly, you're spending too much time. Because some people that I'll meet is like I have to spend way too much time trying to be friendly to them, but I get almost nothing out. So those people you just keep as acquaintance. You don't really spend too much time because the only thing that you have going for you is your time.
Yep.
What is the best investment
Yep.
for the time that you're going to put into it?
I kind of noticed a lot of things on this last trip that I took to Orlando. Really, it was a really interesting trip for me overall. There was obviously a lot of like the stuff that you expect coming in, learning, like the sessions and all this. Sure, cool, whatever. But there's a fuck ton of people. This thing, right? Like, there's a lot. There's your coworkers who you've probably met a few times. A lot of coworkers you haven't met before, so you're getting the chance to actually spend some time with them off work hours.
Yeah.
There's customers. There's your vendors. There's all sorts of people there, right?
Right.
And different ages, different life situations, different everything, right? So it's a really interesting variety of people there. One thing that I noticed for myself was that if I was at this conference 5 years ago, even not that long, 5 years ago,
You wouldn't get as much out of it.
not even close. I would have felt so different. I would have felt awkward. I would have felt out of place, nervous. I would have been unsure in certain situations.
Yeah.
Going up to a group of people that I didn't know, just not having to do a lot, but just literally just being walking into and just being a part of like a group for a little bit. I would have been uncomfortable doing a lot of this in these groups. Approaching certain people and just starting a conversation to talk about whatever. A lot of this, I realized that, me 5 years ago, it would have been a lot different for me.
Do you know what is the number one skill to possess for success? Now, this is going to sound like some podcast bro bullshit.
It does.
But it
What do you got?
actually, it's so common sense. It's unfucking real. But people don't spend a lot of time trying to perfect this. And it really goes hand in hand with pattern recognition.
What is it?
What do you think it is?
No, you're hitting me with it. What do you think what is it?
Timing.
Sure.
If you have absolute pattern recognition where you can recognize pattern in a multitude ways in life, you can also, if you excel in that, you can also do timing. So imagine, for example, that you are a day trader.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between a day trader who started first day versus a day trader who started in their 10th year? They recognize the pattern of the stock and they know the timing well. That's just one application, though. It could happen in any application. The timing thing is incredible.
Timing's big. I agree with that. I don't know about the number one skill, but it's a big one for sure.
Well, you don't even have to be smart necessarily.
I think it's a big one.
You don't have to actually be smart for timing. The thing is like you look at like many industries and you look at the top number one guys, right? In those industries, a lot of them had impeccable timing.
Well, there's timing, but there's also what are you going to do with it once you're there, right? You can have the best timing, but if you don't know what to do with it once you're in a certain situation.
But timing doesn't compromise. It's just timing, though. Timing is
it does.
preparation
In isolation,
for timing.
in isolation, it does. That's why you're like, okay, the number one skill is like, yeah, but there are a few other things you need with it, right?
Sure, but to have impeccable timing is to be prepared for that timing. You can't say you have timing if you're not prepared. Do you accept what I'm saying though? Because it's like
no.
Because if
I agree with you that timing is like one of the more important
what
skills.
is
That
timing?
is,
But this is the problem.
I agree with that.
The problem is like the way we define timing should change for this reason. Because if you can recognize, okay, for example, you need to buy a lottery ticket. You know tomorrow there's a lottery ticket on this store that's going to cash you out $50 million. If you have impeccable timing, you're going to have the cash to go to that place. You're going to have the timing to transport to that place and buy that ticket in order for you to win. Otherwise, you don't have impeccable timing.
Yeah, sure, but I'll give you another.
Compromised
I'll
in
give
timing.
You, I'll give you another example of having
prepared.
having timing and not having the best decision making afterwards. So, let's say you work at a firm and you want to start up your own thing, right? Like you want to branch off and do something. So timing wise, you could figure it out to when would be the right time to break off and start up a new venture,
right,
and get into that. So you might have the timing right, but if you don't execute properly, that's only half the battle there.
Me personally, I define timing as being prepared for the time that you have to do something. Otherwise, I don't
we see it
have
differently. We agree on the timing. I think let's just leave it there. Let's not fucking try and barge like me in your head and you in my head. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
pointless.
yeah,
but
yeah.
we agree on the. I think we're in agreement there on the timing aspect of things.
But yeah, I think you're right. If singularly you just have timing and you're not prepared, I personally don't consider that timing. I think that's
I understand.
that's where
I understand.
we that's
I
where
understand.
we differ.
I understand.
Other interesting news: Zelensky wants more money.
Yeah. So stupid.
Zelensky wants
And
more money.
in other news, this is your 20 minutes of intellectual talk.
Hey,
On to the current events. I like it.
onto the current. Hey, listen, I pulled a 28-minute.
Bro, that was impeccable timing.
Yeah,
No, that was really good. That was really good.
28 minutes of fucking academics, man. Go suck my dick.
Hey,
Listen,
I want to see more of that, man. I want to see more out of that from you.
I'm focusing a lot more on that. But what I think we should do is we should go back to open mics too, man.
I was thinking about that on the drive over, actually.
I
It's
think-
just, again,
Timing.
how many fucking times?
Yeah.
We should get I don't know if you can, if you have a free time to do this, fair. If you don't, that's fine too. But if you could add a counter in the video, just how many times we said the word timing. And pattern recognition, like put a
Yeah.
counter for those, I'd be curious to see how many.
I think pattern recognition with this one, it's 5. Timing's probably like 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, open mics. The issue is scheduling because they've moved the dates around.
Yeah.
The Friday is no longer on Friday; it's now on the Wednesday. Okay, I was doing more. I was looking more into the Facebook group for Vancouver Comics, whatever, because I'm paying attention now more to those posts. Do you know who's running all the funky nights?
Ooh.
It's that motherfucker. It's not even like, I don't want to shit talk him on the pod, but whatever. He's okay. He's just. I wouldn't think that he'd be good enough to be running a night. His name is Umang Shah. It's that short. It's not the brown dude with the beard,
Okay.
but it's the. Actually, I'll pull him up right now. It's the brown dude, the short brown dude, has an accent.
Doesn't give me much to work.
Here, hold on. When I pull him up, you'll be like,
I know
oh,
like 1,000 short
Umangs?
brown dudes. Short
Oh.
brown dudes, probably named Uman. Bro, one of my cousins' name's Uman. I barely know this guy. He could be this guy.
this fucking guy. You remember him?
Dude, I barely recognize this guy.
Yeah, he would come up to the underground.
I barely recognize this
But
guy.
you do recognize him.
I kind of
Yeah. So he's running all the funky nights.
That's crazy.
Hilarious.
That's unreal.
That's why I'm also kind of skeptical of funkies now. I'm like, this is what they're like scrapping the
I
bottom
think
of
the
the
day
barrel.
that would work is a Saturday night.
Sorry,
Saturday night.
I don't. Is there? It's fine. We can look it up later. We have the Excel sheet now, which is like
Yeah.
the master list.
Yeah, perfect.
So we'll do that.
Let's update that Excel sheet like once every 6 months. Once
No,
a
it's
year.
not ours. It's a shared.
No, I understand, but like I'm saying, like while we are going and doing open mics, we'll see which ones are good.
Oh,
which
for
ones
sure.
are
Yeah,
not
but
good,
we'll have to
and
make a copy of it. That's fine.
Yeah,
But I'm saying like we can't
Yeah,
touch
yeah.
that. That's not our list.
I'll mark it up on Bluebeam or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other aspects I want to say is
Did you want to make this one a second one, or do you want to?
I just want to go for another 5 minutes.
Oh, sure.
The other aspect I would say is you really see the industry dying.
What
right now
industry?
in Canada? Just people with
What
money.
what industry? I don't understand. Like what?
Every
Everything?
industry. Every industry.
I don't know about that.
And the reason I say this is because people are in more of a deficit for money, so therefore they don't have enough expenditure to go out as much.
Well, okay. This is worth like another a half an hour on its own, honestly.
Not really,
But it 100% is. We're talking
we
about
could.
you're talking about like the fiscal environment of a whole fucking nation. Like this is not a 2-minute conversation.
No, what I'll specify. it
No,
so
but
it's not
I have thoughts on
crazy.
this too. I think one of the main reasons, I want to be very clear about that. One of the main reasons why we're seeing this issue happening right now, banks aren't lending. And the ones that are lending at a higher rate than they used to. So we went through a fucking crazy inflationary period where people were getting loans for like 1%, 1.5% for a house, for a car, for renovations, for whatever, for fucking dildos around the corner. Anything and everything. Banks were like, we'll give you money. And we don't need to get paid that much. Just take it and pay us fucking 1.5% APR. Crazy. People are fine. I'm going to buy everything. New cars, new houses. Houses started going up. Cars started going up. grow and then the private sector was like, well, hey, if people are spending more, then why don't we fucking raise our prices? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Groceries start going up, retail starts going up, going out starts going up, everything starts going up, and then the nation's like, well, okay, this is a lot. Like we got to try and curb this. What can we do? Bank Canada's like, well, we can't really do much. We can't tell people to stop spending money, but what we can do is we can fuck with the interest rate a little bit, and then hopefully that will get the banks to start giving out loans at a higher percent. People start realizing it, and only the ones who really have capital lying around will be able to spend.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that do? That puts basically a freeze on people doing this discretionary spending, and now we have this issue where a lot of the people who actually have money. This is what's funny about this whole thing. The plan was that by increasing these rates, you'd get the people who don't have money, who actually don't have, are taking like heavy loans, to stop spending. But you got to understand that the people who actually have money are generally pretty conservative about their money. That's how they have money. So even though they have it to spend, they're actually also deciding to not. So in reality, you basically just froze everybody.
Yeah.
So now you have people who are hoarding cash because they're waiting for when things are going to take a turn up. And then you have the other side of people who actually don't have money.
My only pushback to this is how much taxation is happening. For example,
it's the same as
but just the system of getting taxed is retarded. For example, I'll give you an example right now. I make $5,000. Okay, I pay tax on that $5,000.
Yeah.
Then I gift you with that $5,000. Then you pay tax on that $5,000. If you decide to spend that $5,000, you have to pay sales tax to whatever the fuck you're paying.
I don't pay tax on a gift.
There's gifts that you have to pay tax on. There's I don't know if it's 5,000 or more, but it's something that at a certain context you got to pay tax on. Look this up. If I give you $100,000, you're gonna have to pay tax on that. If I'm gifted $100,000, that's what you should look at. If I'm gifted $100,000 in British Columbia, do I have to pay tax on that? I believe you do.
There is no gift tax in Canada.
Oh, thank Jesus. The only
Taxes do not need to be paid.
So, but in the States you do, right?
States are different. That's the reason why lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just interesting because we not only do we pay income tax, we pay sales tax, and we pay property tax. Like it's just unbelievable.
Bro, you don't have a property tax. Shut up.
We sell.
I don't want to hear about complaining about that.
I could easily go buy a fucking place just like your place. And
then go do it.
But why?
Until you can, don't complain about what you don't have.
But what's the point?
No, because you're talking about a property tax. I'm like, yeah, I feel that shit. You don't feel it, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, but property tax is not like the end all be all.
For a house, it is. For a house, it's fucking huge.
Your income tax is a lot more than your property tax, even for a house.
Yeah, but your income tax, you feel and you don't feel.
You
know
don't
what I mean?
feel because you live off your net.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's because
off your net.
It's not like you get money and then you pay it off.
Yeah,
it's taken. So that's why most people don't like. It hurts when you look at it.
Employees, yes,
but you're not really feeling it because you're like, okay, well, yeah, no, business. We're talking about literally like most people, right?
Yeah.
Employees. But a property tax is different because no matter your situation, you're paying that every year, just like as it is. It's not coming out of your what you have to fucking pony up.
So in construction, you see this sometimes where 50% of your trades are getting paid like subs. So you'll have like plumbers.
Oh, and then they got to figure this shit out.
Plumbers that are getting paid like $12K a month.
But they got to figure this shit out.
He's got to figure it out himself.
Fuck.
So
Yeah,
there's aspects of that. But again, it always, if you have a frontier accountant who's on top of your shit, who you're paying like, let's say 5 to 10 grand worth per year to be your accountant.
Yeah, for sure.
It's always better
I believe it.
to get paid as a sub than to get paid as an employee. I'll tell you this, because if I got paid as a sub right now, I'd be making like probably $190K.
Yeah.
But I get paid as an employee, so I make like 135.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Totally different life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because if you're getting paid 190, dog, there's literally no point in doing software at that point. Because most people in Vancouver are pretty much getting that kind of thing as intermediate senior level.
Makes sense.
Anyways, you got any last quotes for us?
There was a really...
Just say the quote.
No, I can't remember. If you can help me through it or if you can remember it yourself, but you were talking about earlier timing being like preparation. It reminded me of a really good quote where it's like success is the culmination of preparation, timing, and hard work, something like that. It was like a really good one. If I ever find the actual full quote,
Keep it for next one.
I will.
We'll keep it for next one. I got one right here.
What you got?
Do not seek happiness outside yourself.
I like that one.
Always be content within.
Ooh, maybe.
All right, we're out.
Peace.
Peace.